It was a cold, dreary night, November 16th, 1940. A man by the name of William Griffith Wilson, affectionately known by many as Bill W., was laying in his third-floor New York City apartment with an ulcer, depression, and deep anxiety. This man, who would become the co-founder of a 12-step recovery fellowship and lead thousands of men and women to long-term sobriety and healing from alcoholism and addiction, was at his wit's end. He had been sober since 1934. His main text of the program was published in 1939, and he was still trying to find ways for people to purchase the book because that's the only way they knew that people could find long-term sobriety. The press was skeptical. His book wasn't selling. He lost his job in the efforts to bring people to the healing and hope of the 12 steps, and so he was jobless and living on the income of his wife, who worked at a department store. And he always had this insatiable hunger for greatness in life, as do most alcoholics. We're grandiose people. We always want to jump higher and hit the ball further. And that sense of grandiosity had driven him to the point of alcoholic death and insanity, but it also brought him to God. And so here he was, thinking he was turning his life around, but in this thirst for greatness in life, thirst to let this movement that he founded take off, it was stalling out and failing. And so on November 16th in 1940, he was lying on his bed, troubled at what to do. And then his caretaker knocked on the door and said, "There's a bum from St. Louis here, and he wants to see you." Bill W. got very used to these types of encounters, and even though he was feeling awful, he said, "Well, let him in." And the man that walked up those stairs ever so slowly with a stiff leg and a cane walked into the room of Bill W. and said, "Hello, I'm a priest from St. Louis named Father Edward Dowling, a Jesuit priest." He sat down with Bill W. and they talked for 3 or 4 hours, though Bill thought it would only take a few minutes. His encounter with this Jesuit Missouri priest changed his life forever, to where he considered that his second conversion experience. And Father Ed would become Bill W.'s spiritual director for the next 20 years until Father Ed's passing in 1960. Father Ed saw the deep, significant parallels between the 12 steps and the Ignatian exercises, and wanted to show Bill W. that he was grateful for the spiritual healing that he was bringing forth. But in that encounter, Bill W. also opened up his heart and soul to this priest he had just met. He opened up about his dreams for success, how he had failed in life, and how this fledgling fellowship was starting to have some serious obstacles. And that even though he had been sober from alcohol since 1934, he said there was still this thirst for something that he could never get quenched. And he looked at Father Ed and said, "Will the thirst ever go away? Will there ever be any satisfaction?" And Father Ed Dowling said, "No. Never." He said, "As long as you're thirsting for anything but God, you'll never get it quenched." That you and I are called not to not be thirsty. We all have a thirst in life, but it's a matter of where do we go to quench our thirst. And that anything but God will always bring us back to a position of divine dissatisfaction. Father Ed simply looked at Bill that night in 1940 and said, "Blessed are you when you hunger and thirst for righteousness. He who eats my bread will never hunger. He who drinks my blood never thirsts." The last line of our gospel today. For Father Ed, he said it wasn't a problem that we have a thirst in life, but what's more important is where do we go for that thirst for life to be quenched? And I thought about that today because all of us have a thirst for life. All of us want life and life to the full, as John 10:10 says. Every single one of us has a thirst for peace in our heart. Everyone has a thirst for greatness in life. Every single one of us wants to have lasting security and happiness and peace. It doesn't matter how much we make. It doesn't matter how many experiences we have. Something in us is always dissatisfied. a divine dissatisfaction, that no matter what experiences we have, no matter how much we make, no matter what we do, something in us is always wanting more. A holy divine dissatisfaction, because deep down, as Jesus told us in our gospel today, it's because we were made to run on God, that our hunger and thirst will only be satisfied when we go to the bread of life and the chalice of our salvation. Where do we go to quench our hunger and thirst in life? We see one reason why we know one place we shouldn't go, and that's what we heard in our first reading today, where the Israelites had just been liberated from over 400 years of captivity to Pharaoh in Egypt. And now they've seen the plagues. They saw the miracles of God. They had the angel of death pass over their households. They established the Passover covenant meal. They were liberated. They crossed the Red Sea. And after all of that, they're in the desert alone with God, fire by night, pillar by day, still getting miracles. And they said, you know what? Egypt wasn't so bad. What do they say? They say this: would it have been better for us to have just stayed enslaved and died in Egypt, where we would have sat by our flesh pots and had our fill of bread? Think about that. They would have rather died slaves than live in freedom with God. The biggest miracle wasn't getting the Hebrews out of Egypt. The next 40 years in the desert took the miracle of getting the spirit of Egypt out of the hearts of the Hebrews. They could free the Hebrews from Egypt, but that deep down, that idolatry they witnessed, that they then manifested throughout those 40 years. That even though they were enslaved, at least they had a minimum of food and a mediocre sense of stability. They settled. Freedom scared them. That yes, they were free now as God's people, but all of a sudden they had to rely on God's provision. All of a sudden they had to walk through the desert with God, and that frightened them. That they would rather have kept themselves enslaved with mediocre comfort and convenience than be free with God. That can be a temptation for us as well. That through the sacrament of confession, we are liberated, you could say, from the Egypt of our sin. Right? We're forgiven of our sin. He breaks the chains of sin and death. But then the rest of our lives can be a battle too, of trying to get that spirit of Egypt out of our hearts. Those disordered attachments in our lives. Those things that we build around us that say, okay, these might be sinful, but they're not the big ones. And it's a little bit convenient. It's a little comfortable. I can settle where I'm at. That yes, some of these things I do in my life aren't the best. I'd be enslaved to them. But at least I can sit by my flesh pot and eat my fill of bread. What is the Egypt in our hearts this evening? What are the Egypts that the Lord has liberated you from? Maybe there's some big things in your life that God has delivered you from, but now the work in God's life and yours is to cleanse your heart of even that spirit of Egypt. Maybe it's a disordered attachment to entertainment, to sports, to money, to other people's opinions. Maybe it's a minimalistic view of the faith, where it's that idea of I can still be a Catholic and a Christian and not have to really grow that much. There can be this false notion, you could say in Egypt of even Catholicism, of that I can grow in my Catholic Christian life, but also stay comfortable and make sure my faith is convenient. That's impossible. We are either growing in our Catholic Christian faith, or we're growing in comfort and convenience. They will not happen at the same time. Why? Because to be a Catholic in the United States today will never be comfortable if we're radically living it out. To be a Catholic in the United States today will never be comfortable. We will always be seen as a little bit off. As Pope Benedict XVI said, we should be a creative minority, bringing the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. To be a Catholic in the United States today means we have to identify what Egypt are we living in, and how can God liberate us from that Egypt? And then deeper still, what spirit of Egypt is still living in my heart, and am I willing to let Him break those chains as well? And believe me, if we agree to that process day in and day out, then you and I will grow in our courageous but calm Catholic faith, and we will be misunderstood. People will not view us as convenient or comfortable or safe, and that's okay, because neither was Jesus. And then in response to Israel's grumblings, God provides them manna, daily bread, that every morning bread's going to come from the sky and you're going to have just enough. We find out from the rest of Exodus that they were going to get 1 day's worth of bread each day, except right before Sabbath they got 2 days, so they didn't have to do anything on the Sabbath. They were given daily bread, daily provision. No, we do not pray, give us this day our weekly bread. We will not say, give us this day our monthly bread. Or give us this daily bread, but only on Christmas and Easter. We don't pray that, do we? We say, give us this day our daily bread. Why? Because God wants to adventure with you in the desert of your life daily. He wants you to trust Him 24 hours at a time, just like recovery. It's a 24-hour-a-day program. You don't have to be sober for 40 years. You just got to be sober 1 day at a time. The same is true to rely on the daily bread of God. He wants you to say, give us this day our daily bread, and say, trust in my daily bread. But see, the temptation, at least in my life, is I pray daily bread, but I'm really asking for more. God, can you give me like a week's worth of bread? A week's worth of grace. Like, I know you said daily bread, and I prayed it all the time, but I don't want more than just a day's, please. How about 3 days? How about 4? How about a week? And why? Why deep down am I tempted to pray for more than daily bread? Because if I have a surplus of God's grace, then I can go back to being boss. If He gives me a whole week's worth of grace, I don't need to trust Him every day. I just had to trust Him one day, get a bunch of grace, and now live off of it. But He says, no, I'm not going to give you what you need for the whole week. I'm not going to give you what you need for a whole year. I will give you what you need today. Can we trust that? That can be scary. To know that when you woke up this morning, God's going to give you exactly how much grace you need to see yourself through the day, not even tomorrow. So why worry about it? He'll give you the grace tomorrow. That can be a radical position of trust, but that is our invitation that we actually pray each and every Mass during the Lord's Prayer. The process of being freed from our interior Egypt is exactly what St. Paul told us in his letter to the Ephesians today, when he talks about putting the old man away and that we can grow in the freedom of the children of God. But realize that true Christian freedom is scary, and it's different than our modern, sometimes misunderstood American view of freedom. We love freedom in America, right? But we have to really define what kind of freedom are we talking about. Usually, in the American mindset, we think of freedom as freedom from. Freedom from inhibitions, freedom from any restrictions, freedom from someone telling me what to do, freedom from any type of constraints. When Christian freedom is freedom for loving your spouse as Christ loved the church, freedom for educating your children to walk as disciples of Jesus Christ, freedom for exercising your civic responsibility in a way that matters to our faith and morals, freedom for building up the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, which means courageously living out your faith. As Christians, our freedom is never freedom from sin. It's freedom for virtue. It's never freedom from constraints. It's freedom for bringing people to truth. Are we exercising freedom for others to lay down our lives as Christ did for each one of us? True freedom can be scary because as we grow in freedom, we grow in responsibility. It's kind of like growing up, there were sins that I committed that I didn't know were sins. And then later in life, I found out it was a sin, and part of me is like, darn it, now I can't do that anymore. I would have stayed ignorant. Wouldn't it be better if I just didn't know that was a sin because now I feel guilty more? No. Because freedom for says I'm freedom for living a virtuous life, for conquering sin. That our freedom increases our responsibility to exercise that freedom with nobility, honor, integrity, and joy. And then in our gospel, the crowd asks Jesus, what can we do to accomplish the work of God? Notice that phrase. What is the emphasis on? Themselves. What can we do to accomplish the work of God? A little bit of self-reliance. Just tell us what I can do to do your job, God. What can we do to accomplish the work of God? Self-reliance, proud, self-independence. But what does Jesus say? The work of God is to believe whom God sent. You want God? You want to do the work of God? Trust him and let him do work through you. That Jesus didn't tell him, here's things you have to do. He simply said, I want you to believe in me. I want you to trust in me. That's what faith means. Faith isn't just an intellectual assent to some sort of doctrine. It's a deep trust in a person of Christ. So when he's telling people, you want to do the works of God? Believe in me. Trust in me. Trust that I'm going to give you your daily nourishment for your daily heartaches and struggles. That's the invitation we have, that if you and I receive our daily bread of grace, of love, of the Eucharist, of the sacraments, we will accomplish the work of God, because deep down it's God working through us. Our invitation today is to courageously fall into the embrace of Jesus. To pray when we receive the bread of life today, that when you come forward to receive the bread of life, to receive the outpouring of faith. Faith that God can truly provide for your needs one day at a time. To pray for an increase in hope that with that daily provision, your future is secured in him. To pray for a daily increase of true love that exercises freedom for the good of others, and you lay down your life for those entrusted to your care. And that when we pray in a few moments, give us this day our daily bread, we truly believe that God, one day at a time, one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathways to peace, we surrender to your will, trusting that we will be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with God in the life to come. Blessed are we who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for you and I will be satisfied.